Sometimes it takes a kid show to tackle the concept of grieving over the death of a loved one in a much more profound way. Welcome everyone to Retro Review TV, and today we'll be looking at some of the most effective examples of when a television show or movie, primarily or seemingly aimed at children, tackle the concept of death and grieving over the loss of a loved one in the most effective and tasteful manner. And as an obvious warning, this video will be tackling a sensitive subject matter, but not for the sake of being dark and edgy, but rather to help families that are dealing with the loss of a loved one find a helpful or relatable program to check out that could perhaps help out the children of the family and even the adults. To make it into this list, we'll be looking at family-friendly TV shows and movies that tackle the concept of dealing with death in the most appropriate and tasteful manner, but still not taking away from the actual tough, relatable things one does go through in real life. And for this list, we will be giving a higher preference to more realistic live-action shows, as cartoons and stories of fantasy just might not be seen as relatable enough or hit as close to home to viewers watching, even though some fantastical stories will still make their way into this list. But yeah, we'll be more so focusing on stories that show how realistic characters deal with the death of a loved one, and not talking dinosaurs, talking babies, superheroes, or imaginary friends. And the more relatable and engaging it is to all ages, we'll put it higher and higher on this list. And so, here we go. Number 10, Sydney to the Max, the episode The Sid Who Stole Christmas. Now, chances are you probably have not seen this new Disney sitcom yet, but you really should, as it features a great relatable story about a very close father and daughter duo, which makes it all the more heartbreaking when you realize the daughter of the show, Sydney, had to deal with the loss of her mother many years ago. But it's definitely felt most in the show's Christmas special when circumstances caused Sydney and her dad to not go on a vacation like they have every Christmas since Sydney's mother died. And since we see through the flashbacks how Sydney associates her happiest memories of her mom with having Christmas at home, it causes Sydney to try to escape from and even mess up her family's Christmas, all as a means to not want to deal with a traditional Christmas season without her mother around. It may seem like a simple story, but it does really capture the feeling that some people have in that they try to escape from or eliminate any major thing that reminds them of someone they lost, when in reality, especially when it comes to your life long term, it's important to not run away from your memories of the past, no matter how hard they seem. Number 9, Sesame Street, The Death of Mr. Hooper. Okay, so this is going to be the only preschool show we'll put on this list, but it would be wrong if we left it out. For a show starring the friendliest inner-city neighbors and puppets you'll ever meet, the show decided to keep it very real and straightforward with its audience in this episode. When the actor who played the owner of the town convenience store, Mr. Hooper, died back in 1982, the show decided to have not just the character die as well, but also address it with Big Bird. And as a story that explains to really little kids how people die, they get pretty direct. The adults pretty much tell Big Bird that, well, he'll never see Mr. Hooper again. And when Big Bird asks why it has to be this way, the adults do not have any real direct answers that make Big Bird feel completely happy, proving that no matter what age you are, there's still no perfect definitive way to truly understand why people must pass away when they do, except that it is important to be there and talk through it with the people that you love. Number 8, the Disney movie Up. Okay, so you may be wondering why we're putting a very imaginative, crazy, and definitely not believable story on this list. But it's mostly for that opening few minutes you have all seen by this point in your life, because it is a brilliant opening. Unlike the majority of the movie, what we see here is just the relatable story of one couple's life. We see the ups, downs, beginning and end of their story, or their relationship more so. And while it is sad at the end with the wife dying and all, because of the montage you do see, you realize this couple did have a long life together that was worth living despite the tragedy at the end, proving that behind every death, there is still a life that should be remembered and celebrated. The only reason we're not putting this higher on the list is because, again, it's only a small part of the movie, but the intro is definitely something worth revisiting. Number 7, the Disney movie The Lion King. Okay, so this might seem like a strange thing to add after we already said in our intro that we would not have any fantasy-style characters in this list, but to be fair, Unlike other Disney films such as Coco, The Lion King does not feature the leads going to some magical land and doing all kinds of mystical stuff to solve their problems, and the characters, despite being talking animals, are pretty relatable in that they have to deal with their problems in a realistic way. But yeah, as you all know, the plot to The Lion King deals with a young lion named Simba who has to deal with the death of his father. But unlike most other Disney films, the real kicker here is we see the dead body, something really rough that any kid who has been to a funeral viewing might have found traumatic. And it's here, despite Simba being a cartoon lion, we actually get the full gambit of emotions a kid would go through if their parent died so suddenly, including that desire to just run away from their problems. Now, it doesn't help that the serious moments here are followed up by a goofy music number a few minutes later, along with Simba being able to talk to his deceased father in the sky near the end, but it's still a powerful movie that impacted a lot of people. Number 6. Fuller House, the episode Oh My Santa. Now, Fuller House might seem like a really goofy sitcom at times, but they still had their fair share of emotional moments, especially a surprising one in the season 4 premiere, when Max, during Christmas, suddenly starts to get really upset, and he eventually reveals he got upset earlier that day because he misses his dad. And it's a real hard moment for him because his dad has been dead for years now, and Max had seemingly been over that for quite some time. But the episode shows a painful truth in that sometimes grief from your past can still reemerge and really hit you hard at an unexpected time. It's a real important topic that most shows for any age do not ever really bring up, but the story does show it is very important to always have family and friends around you if a rough moment like this does happen in your life. Number 5. Boy Meets World, the Sean's Father Dies story arc. Now, on this channel we've talked about how despite how silly Boy Meets World could get at times, this 90s sitcom still really hit home with their serious topics, and one of the big ones was the story arc in which Sean's dad passes away. But unlike most TV stories where a parent dies, this one is different because for Sean, his dad was very neglectful, meaning we get a series of tales here that tackles the very mixed emotions one does feel when they lose a parent that hurt them. On the one hand, you do not miss the bad memories, but on the other hand, you do still value that parent to a certain extent. And just the realization how short one's life is when they lose a parent can also cause one to try to reevaluate their problems. But fortunately for Sean, one value he does learn is to stay close to his friends and try to live his life the way he knows his father probably would have wanted him to do, a plot point that actually made its way all the way into the show's sequel series, Girl Meets World. Number 4. The movie Bridge to Terabithia. Okay, so this movie has been praised and criticized by a ton of people over the years, but at the end of the day, it still has a very powerful story all ages can take something from. The majority of the movie focuses on two simple kids that are outsiders named Jess and Leslie. Now, the first 2/3 of the movie are just the two kids dealing with basic everyday problems, along with their adventures in an imaginary world they make up for fun in their heads. But it's the last third of the movie that really hits you hard if you're not prepared for it. Without giving everything away, a major character dies, and we pretty much see the surviving one go through all the stages of grief, such as denial, anger, and eventually acceptance, with the latter being explored by the surviving character taking what positive things they gained from their relationship with their deceased friend and turning that into something positive and constructive they can share with others. And for anyone out there who complains about this movie's story being seemingly unrealistic, well, truth be told, the book this movie was based upon was actually itself based on real-life events that happened to the author's son when their best friend died at a young age. And then, just to add to that, the author's son years later became the producer of this movie. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of passion and realistic relatability that's thrown into this film, and does deserve a lot of respect. Number 3. Full House, the episode The Last Dance. Now, for being the most child-friendly 90s sitcom with tons of corny and cute moments in every episode, you'd think Full House would be the last TV series ever out there to effectively address death. Now, in the episode The Last Dance, the beginning of the story is pretty much Michelle spending time with her great-grandfather, who is also Jess's grandfather, doing fun stuff together, and even learning a traditional Greek dance from him. But then the story does a 180 turn, when Michelle suddenly learns in the middle of the day that her great-grandfather has just died. The story truly does go through nearly all of the rough emotions anyone experiences when a family member dies so suddenly like this. Jesse and Michelle, for example, wonder how they could have prevented the death, and they try to hide how sad they are in an attempt to keep the other from feeling sadder, but they just wind up becoming even more sad because there is no way they can deal with this sudden death so quickly. It's a real rough and heartbreaking series of scenes to see. However, the two characters do eventually start to take the right first steps in more ways than one, by having the episode end with Michelle and Jesse simply demonstrating a dance that their late family member taught them, demonstrating the impact the late man had on their lives, and showing, even when a family member passes away, their legacy can still live. Number 2, the movie My Girl. Yeah, it'd be easy to make jokes about how your inner child isn't really traumatized until it sees this movie, but it's still a very powerful film. The story focuses on a girl named Veda who lives with her single dad whose mom died years ago, and the two live in a funeral home that Veda's father runs. So already, we're dealing with a movie that doesn't really hide at all. It's going to address the concept of death for young people watching. Now, like many other stories on this list, the story does start out simple enough, with Veda just dealing with simple everyday life issues that most girls go through. But unfortunately, without giving all the details away, there is a death of a major character that happens. But unlike the other live action entries on this list, we see the body. In fact, we see the character right as they're about to die, and then we even hold the camera on them for quite a while at the funeral. The movie definitely gets really direct with the complete raw experience and emotions someone experiences when someone close to them passes away, but that makes the character of Veda just feel all the more identifiable to anyone else out there who's experienced something like this. And while Veda is not doing perfectly fine by the end of the story, we do see that she has been able to channel her feelings into something productive and profound, and is working on finding a new friendship and rebuilding her life, showing viewers that no matter how traumatic an experience you go through can feel, life can still indeed continue. Number 1. Gordimer Gibbons' Life on Normal Street, the episode Mel vs. the Future. Now, while this episode of this Amazon streaming series has not been seen by as many viewers versus the other things on this list, it does not make it a less powerful story. Now, this story features a young teenage character named Mel trying to cope with her life after her mother suddenly dies. Now, unlike the other shows on this list that deal with the death of a loved one in the middle of the story, or deal with the emotions they're feeling sometime afterwards, this episode solely and extensively deals with just the first few days of a person's life after their loved one has passed away, complete with all of the raw emotions and rattled up feelings that one experiences in this sensitive time. And most importantly, it shows how completely messed up and broken one can feel following an unexpected tragedy, such as Mel spending less time with her friends and father while becoming absorbed in an attempt to create a form of time travel in an attempt to save her mother. And despite this being a fantastical concept, it really can be seen as a creative, child-friendly stand-in allegory for suicide. Seriously. Mel wants to escape the life she is trapped in and wants to use an easy answer method to end her time in this reality, and yeah, it's pretty dark stuff. And since she is so separated from her still living loved ones, her time travel method might even seem more inviting to her despite it not being a sure solution. However, by the end of the episode, it does show that the one certain way to help you deal with the death of someone you care about is to become closer than ever with everyone else that is still alive around you that you care about. Something that we must all never forget.